So right after I wrecked the trike, I was thinking about trying to put it back together really quickly. Well, then I tried to think about updating the design by adding suspension. But then, of course, vacation happened, and vacation was a good way to just kind of remove my mind from it and come back to it every so often. Well, I've had almost a month to think about it, and a month has always turned out to be like the perfect time for me to think about something. If I just leave something and just think about it over a month, I tend to have very good ideas. And actually, I recently saw a talk by John Cleese where he said the same thing.
I was always intrigued that one of my Monty Python colleagues, who seemed to be, to me, more talented than I was, did never produce scripts as original as mine. And I watched for some time, and then I began to see why. If he was faced with a problem, and fairly soon saw a solution, he was inclined to take it, even though, I think, he knew the solution was not very original. Whereas if I was in the same situation, although I was sorely tempted to take the easy way out and finish by 5 o'clock, I just couldn't. I'd sit there with the problem for another hour and a quarter, and by sticking at it, would, in the end, almost always come up with something more original. It was that simple. My work was more creative than his simply because I was prepared to stick with the problem longer. So imagine my excitement when I found that this was exactly what McKinnon found in his research. He discovered that the most creative professionals always played with the problem for much longer before they tried to resolve it.
I'll put a link to that really nice talk that he did in the description, but I think he's a pretty smart person, so I enjoy pretty much any video that he's in. So basically, I thought about this even more, and I came up with 2 designs, or actually more accurately, I came up with a design that is really, really nice, and I would love to have, but it would take so much work that it'd be easier just to make a simple design for now and work on that design later. So, you guys probably saw a while back, I made some 3D animations that I put onto my YouTube channel about different ideas for having suspension on the wheels. And they're kind of interesting, and it would add about 30 pounds of weight to the trike, but it would possibly add a lot more rigidity and make it stronger and more durable, and possibly capable of me actually going across the country like I plan to do in a few years. Well, it occurred to me that idea is actually kind of wrong. I should change that to use a leaf spring. Well, see, before I was stuck in a single line of thinking. So basically, I was thinking the leaf spring will be here and flexing like up or whatever. Well, what if I get a carbon fiber leaf spring, just a carbon fiber strip, which is, it might cost like $200 for one, but still, that'd be really light and really powerful. Basically, I have one long leaf spring going across here. So it's mounted in the middle. Actually, you'd have 2 leaf springs. You'd have one here and one here. So it would have motion to where each wheel can go up. But of course there'd be 2 leaf springs, so that would keep it level, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be like just flipping around like that. So yeah, I'm thinking about upgrading this in the future to have one single leaf spring connected in the middle, where each wheel can move up and down, just like maybe an inch or so, just to help relieve bumps. I do worry about it bending too much on taking turns and shifting the weight. That would be a big issue. But I think even if the leaf springs are stiff, that would help remove a lot of the stress on the vehicle. Because I don't care how the ride feels. I mostly just care about like relieving stress on this vehicle. Because this thing's like, well, it's heavier than me, that's for sure. And so whenever I hit a bump, that's a lot of energy hitting into the wheels and hitting into the axle, and so it broke like that. Well, what I'm going to do in the meantime, since that's a pretty big project, I'm going to just fix it where it will not have a rotating axle under load, because that's the main issue. This one had an axle that was under load and rotating at the same time. So it had to support the weight and turn, which meant that it kind of like, to the axle's point of view, it got like twisted around like that, and just a little bit that it flexed. But it would flex in like a circular rotation until it just snapped off. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some regular wheels which are these ones, which are just wheels you can get off pretty much any bike. Unlike these ones, which are only made by Schwinn, and they're a piece of shit, and they cost like 80 bucks a piece. These cost 20 bucks a piece, so I can just have like 15 of them or whatever. I don't know. I can get them off junk bikes and stuff like that. But also, they will have a non-rotating axle. So that axle that goes in between there is stationary. So if it flexes, it just flexes like that. But most of the time, it'll just stay flexed. Whereas before, it would be flexed every time it went around. So it would basically be flexing every rotation. But with this, it won't be flexing nearly as much. So it'll be much stronger. And then I can have this going off to a jack shaft, which, to be honest, I think I'm going to move the wheels back like an inch or two to add stability and keep this original axle on there, but just have a sprocket on there so it's the jack shaft. It's no longer underweight, but it is providing rotational torque to the back sprocket. So yeah, that's my thought process. What we're planning to do right now is get some of this U-channel and make a fork for this wheel. 81, 82, 83, 84, 85 and a half. Actually, it just occurred to me my Sawzall will do just fine. And a much thinner cut than the angle grinder would. I should be able to just bend it. Oh, look at that. Isn't that awesome? I think it turned out pretty nicely. It's only about 14 bucks in iron. I'll weld this so it's a nice strong shape that goes around. And then of course we'll add some angle iron on here. But I think we'll add it in this configuration to make it strong. So now it's time to weld it. I have 4 car batteries in series being charged by my bike charger, so it's feeding in 2.5 amps of power, and they're sitting at 58.3 volts. So that's good, they're charging up nicely. Here's the piece I'll weld. I'm just gonna, well, I haven't welded in like a year, so I'm going to just try to weld in this little bit right here. That's a bit too hot of a weld for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the weakest battery. There we go. So now we just have 36 volts. That should do a lot better. So I'm running into the issue of having too much power in these welds, and it's melting the actual metal I'm welding to. So it's more like just cutting the metal than actually welding to it. I have 3 options that I can think of to fix this. 1, get a bucket of salt water and use that as a resistor. 2, run the batteries low so they just don't provide much power. Or 3, add more jumper cables, because each jumper cable, at least these ones, are 0.7 ohms. Yeah, 0.7 ohms, I think. So, adding 2 more in series will add 1.4 ohms. 1.4 ohms of resistance, at least. So that might help it, because basically I want there to be higher voltage when I'm trying to make the arc, but then lower voltage when I'm actually pulling the power and making the arc. I could just go down to having 2 batteries, but the issue with 2 batteries is then it's only 24 volts whenever it's not making connections, so it's very difficult to keep the arc. So there are the welds. These corner welds are a pain in the ass, that's for sure. And these long welds are pretty easy though. Quite happy with those. Not bad for not welding in a while. So I got these all welded up. And look at that. These welds are pretty chunky, but oh well. I made sure to add some weld on some of them. I may go back over and do that again. I don't know for sure how much that'll help. Not bad for car batteries. Now the big question is that strong enough? I'm thinking it probably is, but I don't want to be on the side of the road again, or possibly dead. So I'm going to spend the extra time and money and just add some angle iron across here to help keep it from fluxing. But before I do that, I say let's go ahead and work on the second one. I just ran out to Home Depot and got the last one in stock, so we have another piece of C-channel. Only cost 14 bucks for it, so it's not too bad. I mean, it is a bit high for a piece of metal, but for a piece of metal that's always the same, whatever. Especially in the Bay Area, fucking prices. Well, anyway, so I say let's take this one, do the same thing with that to get that in the same state as that, and then we can have 2 of them, and we can be upgrading them both at the same time then. That'll take me about 35 minutes to weld. But that entire fork is pretty much welded solid. So I took the angle iron and I cut it up into strips. So I have some 13-inch pieces that can go right here to add rigidity to the frame. And then I had some 3.5-inch pieces. I can go right here to help add rigidity. So I cut 2 of these and 1 of these for each fork. And then I cut it in a way to where I actually ended up with 3 of these 23-inch angle iron rods for whenever I'm wanting to mount them up, actually. So that should be a pretty nice little width. Should be whatever I need, you know what I mean? So with these out of the way, we can now work on actually mounting them up. In order to mount it up, we're going to have to remove the box, remove the fenders, and remove this wheel. Possibly even remove the axle, or at the very least chop off the end. Because I'm thinking about leaving the axle, but only leaving it to act as a jack shaft to power the wheel. I believe this is pretty much close to the design I'm going to end up using. These pieces won't come out past here, but I'll have this piece of angle iron coming out to here, this piece coming out to here, welded here, here, and here on each side. Then with a piece going across that's 23 inches long to actually mount up to these. Same on the bottom, we'll have another 2 things. Although those will actually be thicker, there will be like, I don't know, that thick by that wide. There'll be long strips of steel. They won't be angled back like that, they'll be level with this, but they'll be welded to this connector right here, and they'll go back to about, I don't know, here or so. Because I want these to kind of angle that way a little bit, kind of like they are right now. I think that might be kind of cool. Also, if I hit a bump, that I have more force going into the system, not like twisting the system. Or so I think, I don't really know. And of course I'll have a bar going across here. So basically this is going to be a rectangle of steel. I think I'll use this center angle iron in that area. And I'll have the same over here. I'll probably chop off this axle so I don't have to worry about it over there, but then I can actually weld a sprocket onto here. Now I will have to keep in mind that this is going to have a tire on it. So I'll put a tire on this, or put something underneath it to keep it raised up. I might just put a brick underneath the wheels. But I got to keep in mind that this will actually be another like 1.5 inches off the ground, so I don't want it to be too high. Here's the stuff I got. 3 lengths of 1-inch angle iron. 1 of these big lumps of iron. I believe these ones can go like this really nicely. so this is all coming together nicely. Next, we're actually going to be adding the forks, which have the wheels on them. So we're getting pretty close. Next thing to do is to chop that off, because we don't want to have that on there. But I still want to have this, so I can use that axle to power stuff. So I ordered these wheels, or these tires a while back from Amazon, and they look pretty nice. Like 20, I think 15 or 20 bucks, I can't remember. They'd be nice road tires, nice and wide. Because the wider the tire, the less displacement there will be on the weight, so less like drag and rolling resistance. So I have these all lined up to within 1/16 of an inch. That's 1/16 of an inch from the edge of the wheels. So I think that's pretty good. The ground is not level, but I don't really have any other good place to be any better. The ground in here sucks so much. And after all, it really doesn't matter how these are placed with the bike. They could be off just a little bit. It matters more how they are placed to each other. And they're equal to each other pretty much, at least in that axis. So they won't be, like, one won't be going that way while one's going that way or whatever. And I just checked after the welds, these wheels are still 26 inches and 26 inches, so they haven't changed at all. So I'm quite happy with this, and I don't think I can change it anymore to be much better. So I might as well weld it solid so I can actually drive it. This part right here can be welded together really nicely because it's a nice long weld. But right here, there's only that one spot. So I'm going to take these little strips of angle iron and weld them up here and weld them in the middle there. That should be probably pretty good. Well, that didn't take as much welding as I thought it would. I'm running low on welding rods. I've used up a shit ton of welding rods. Those batteries are working great. So I've added this piece and this piece. This, this. And I've welded all the other ones solid. So it's all pretty much sturdy. I do kind of worry because I've moved the axles back 7 inches, so there'll be probably more force in the middle, pushing down. Much greater chance of it snapping in the middle. I would love to reinforce it in the middle, but this pipe is very thin, and it's very easy to burn holes through it, and so I fear that if I tried to upgrade it, I would actually just make it worse. Grinding wood is so weird. Oh man, it makes a lot of smoke too. Whoa, there's like no wind out here. It's weird. Ugh. Well, that doesn't look like it's going to work because I accidentally put these bits too far in. So these go in like that. I didn't even think about that. So I'm just going to disassemble the box, cut off a little bit, and move it over half an inch. That's all I can really do right now. Well, shit. Looks like by adding the box on there, it pushed the wheels out just enough to where now it's an inch difference between the front and the back. What the fuck? I mean, god damn it. So I took the box off and chiseled off a bunch of wood, as you can see it all down there, and now it's pushing less on the wheels. Because see, it was pushing right there. So now it's actually a lot more in shape. 25 and 3/4 inches, or actually a little bit more like 25 and 7/8. Oh, 25 and 3/4. Okay, so it's about the same. Cool. So it looks like it's pretty much aligned still. I bet every time I break this thing and keep rebuilding it, it's just gonna get bigger and bigger. This thing seems so huge right now. Just like 7 inches longer, 2 inches wider. Oh my god, it's a beast. And I have less cargo space. Oh well. Well, there we go. Well, it looks like that was entirely down to my fault. But the welds are still interesting looking. It looks like I didn't actually get much contact on that, so I didn't weld it enough. So I'll do another pass over that and weld it again, but I mean, I'm just kind of thinking about just scrapping this entire idea if it broke that easily. It also appears that I entirely forgot to weld it on this long strip here. That's my fault, of course. So, I mean, I still have the stuff going. It's only 11 o'clock at night. I mean, I do have work tomorrow, but fuck it. I can just weld this a little bit. At least to make it a rolling chassis where I can just park it away. Well, I think that's the most welding I can see a use for tonight. So let's see if this will actually work, or if I can break it again. Okay, I actually think it works okay for that. Now let's drop it. So I've decided to leave my motor and batteries on my good temporary bike for now, and wait a little bit on driving this because it's just unproven, I guess. It hasn't proven itself to be very strong, but I'm quite happy with it. I really hope that it stays together. Now I'll focus on linking up the axle, or now jack shaft, to the back wheel, and then I can actually have pedal power. I also cleaned up the backyard. It looks so much nicer now. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. See ya!